I have 3 agencies, 53 employees. We're on a run rate to $8 million in revenue, and 3 podcasts. The podcasts are the linchpin, the main source of success in getting into these niche markets. More than 2 billion websites active. There's only millions of podcasts. If you take the difference in that number, there's so much opportunity. So I'll leave you with that.
Kevin Daisey is the award-winning CMO of Array Digital and a serial entrepreneur helping law firms dominate online. With over 20 years in digital marketing, he crafts strategies that drive real growth for attorneys. He's the voice behind the Managing Partners podcast.
I've found that almost anyone in the world will come on your podcast if you can get to the right person and reach out to them. If you call them to sell them something, impossible to get to them. I think anyone listening, what's your primary goal? Focus on that. What's the likely next step? If you focus on that one goal, I think the rest will kind of play itself out.
For people listening to us right now who might be like, hey, I want to start a podcast to generate leads. How do they make sure that an audience in their niche ends up becoming a client?
So I would say if anyone's listening that wants to start a podcast, for one.
Kevin, can you tell me about the Managing Partners podcast? What is that?
Well, it's the best thing in the world, pretty much.
Obviously. Can you tell me the second thing about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about the Managing Partners podcast. So the Managing Partners podcast is a legal podcast, but more of a business podcast. So my passion is entrepreneurship and own multiple businesses.
Cool.
And one of those businesses actually helps law firms with SEO, digital marketing, website development, content marketing. And so started the podcast in order to be known in that industry. You know, I'm not a lawyer, but I wanted to hang out with lawyers and get to know them. And so the podcast became about running a law firm business. And we cover everything from leadership, sales, marketing, culture, intake, processes, AI, implementation, everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
And we talk about podcasting as well, how law firms can leverage that in their business. So it attracts a lot of law firm owners. I've had 400 owners of law firms on the show, some of the best and brightest in the world. And that drives those relationships, and it allowed me to be known in the market and get invited into other rooms. And attorneys that want to be doing well in their business listen to the podcast, and they become listening and become clients as well. So it's just been a really cool marketing tool, but also just a good way to learn myself and to meet great people and build a lot of relationships.
How did you come up with the idea? Why did you think 400 episodes ago, oh, I'm going to, start a podcast to talk to my ideal clients and get listened to by my ideal clients?
Came from, for one, me and my business partner were doing a podcast on business, like day-to-day, like tips or things that we learn or good, bad, ugly type of things. And so we were already kind of behind the mic and doing podcasts. So, we were in a mastermind of other agency owners.
Yeah.
And one of the recommendations, heard of people doing some podcasts to get in front of their prospects. You basically host a podcast, you feature them as the guest, and it's their episode about them. And that allows you to then let them know what you do, get referrals, ask for more guests, things like that. So we immediately just took it and ran with it without any audience, without fancy equipment, without even actually a podcast, because we only put it on YouTube for the first year probably.
Interesting.
So we didn't have it integrated, set up to podcast feeds. We called it a podcast. We didn't market it, so it was really bootstrapped, if you will. And it worked just as well. People come on the show anyway.
Just getting into the room with them was enough.
Yeah, and that's what it started out as. If you were my ideal client, this right now, this time what we're talking right this minute, was what it was all about. And less about the content, less about the audience. We didn't care about any of that stuff, actually. And so we just kept our focus on, okay, the important thing is building a relationship with the guest and the follow-up after that. And so we did that for quite a long time before it started to become, hey, the audience is now grown, and now we're getting clients that listen to the show.
Yeah.
The content is good. So it's kind of been a life cycle there. So I would say if anyone's listening that wants to start a podcast, Just really think deep down, like, okay, what's the number one goal? And what's the phases of that, right? Because, it might start out as this and transition over time. And can you kind of map that out? I think you can, for sure.
What did make you do that shift? From the one-to-one conversations being the only thing that matters to, hey, actually, let's focus on top of that, having great content, great conversations so that people like my guests who listen to my stuff are like, who is this guy, Kevin Daisey, who is like talking to people who look like me, who think like me, who smell like me, who is giving me advice and like helping me get into the heads of people like me? What made you make that shift?
Well, I think, we started to get some praise, and I started to even learn or have people reach out that like, yeah, I listened to your podcast. So I think that was the moment of like, oh, wow, okay, change your mindset, because I'm thinking, no one's really listening to this probably. And I used to have questions that were like more about the law firm and the practice of law and what the guests wanted to talk about, which would be themselves. We're the best lawyers at XYZ, and this is why we're the best at XYZ in this town, whatever. Pretty boring stuff, to be honest with you.
Fair enough.
When I heard that lawyers listen, and some of them give me some feedback, I was like, okay, let's make the guests give what the audience wants, but they also get the opportunity to talk about why they're where they are. And so it was more about their journey and their entrepreneurship. And they could mention, hey, I practice XYZ law in this state, blah, 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 because that helps them with referrals and networks between other lawyers. So I kind of was like, okay, let's accomplish both and then have a topic that we can market and then get other people to listen and be able to search for and find interesting. So again, I guess it was kind of like had no idea that anyone would care to listen too much. And so once I just heard that people listened at all, then that kind of triggered me to make some changes.
That makes sense. And I want to dig a little bit deeper into this.
No magical things here. It was
Exactly. But that's super interesting. And I think, so that's, in my opinion, that's the one thing that B2B businesses don't get about podcasts, is that even if you get 0 downloads, which if you do things properly is never going to happen, but let's say you get 0 downloads, you still get away with 52 conversations with ideal clients, potential referral partners, influencers, decision makers in your space each and every year, assuming 1 episode per week. This is like, what other channel allows you to do that?
Yeah.
You're very deliberate about having the guest potentially become clients or referrals partner. Can we get a bit tactical here, Kevin? How do you do this? Like, how do you go from, hey, look, I'm interested into having you as a guest. Hey, look, we had that great conversation. Hey, look, I do XYZ, you do ABC, maybe we should talk. Like, how do you make it happen for people listening to us right now who might be like, hey, I want to start a podcast to generate leads?
I'm not a pushy sales kind of person. People can get more aggressive than I am for sure. But I think the reason it works is because how we do it. And so for one, you have to be authentic. When reaching out to get guests, it doesn't have to be much thought into it. They own a law firm. There's a certain criteria. But other than that, it's invite at scale through my assistants or through messaging or automation.
Yeah.
Until you get someone that's like, hey, we would totally be interested to be on the show. Then I do a little qualifying from there. But we have a process, right? So it's invite the certain type of person, and we do primarily through LinkedIn, easy place to do it. And then once they say they're interested, my assistant will send all those to me and say, hey, take a look at all the ones that want to be on the show.
Interesting.
And then I say, okay, can they do good on the show? Do they have good content potential? And can they be a client? And there's a path though, right? So if they can be a client, 100% be on the show. The content might not be the best. So I got a fine line there. So if they can be a client, like for sure, I feel like that's one way to have them on the show. Because the content might not be stellar.
Fair enough.
Okay. Not every lawyer is great about building their business. Most aren't, actually.
They're lawyers. Exactly. It's a skill.
Just like marketers. We weren't marketing, but we're not good at business. So the other path is they're such a rock star and they have such a following that they probably won't be a client, but they can bring the audience and they could have great content. It's kind of like a fork in the road right there. Regardless, it's all about that person and that one-on-one first.
Yeah.
Referrals and a review for my agency second. Third is the content that we get out of it. And then fourth is learning one-on-one from someone that's applied things in the business that we can apply to our business. So there's, 4 benefits that I get from a podcast. And then of course, the selling them to be a client, that's the primary reason. Yeah. So there's kind of those 2 paths. So I've found that almost anyone in the world will come on your podcast if you can get to the right person and reach out to them.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of, are they not interested? I mean, I have some of like the CEO of Clio and all these big lawyers that are untouchable to some degree. If you call them to sell them something, impossible to get to them. You call them to be on a show and be interviewed, built into their schedule to do as thought leaders. More high profile, the more research they might do into your show and how established it is. But, we kind of have that now. So it's a life cycle, but I think anyone listening, like, what's your primary goal? Focus on that. What's the likely next step? And when does that matter to you? But if you focus on that one goal of the one-on-one time, I think the rest will kind of play itself out.
And I think that's hitting on the nail here. Like, we want to design the podcast. If you want to start a podcast, right, you need to think about what will get me into the room with the people I want to get into the room with, your ideal clients. And as long as the premise of the podcast fits that, a lot of people will just say, hey, yes, I'd be happy to come on the show. Some people will be like, what's the audience? And then you can give the numbers. Some people will be like, what do I get out of it? The way we sell it, especially at the beginning of a podcast, is like, hey, look, sure, it's a beginning podcast. We're going to put some ads budget to grow it faster. But you're also going to get a whole bunch of thought leadership assets out of this. We're going to record it in a nice environment with good audio, with good video. We're going to do a gazillion clips out of this that you can use yourself. We're going to do a trailer. And this usually finishes to convince people to come on the show. Although, as you said, Kevin, a lot of people would just say yes if you have the right person on the phone.
Like, and in this case, I'm on your show.
Exactly.
I don't even know if I know what all the content you're going to get. I assume you're going to, and we'll use it, and we'll publish it, and we'll tag.
That'll be a ton.
But I didn't confirm that first. I was like, I'll be on a podcast because
let's have the chat.
I want more exposure and to be able to talk about some of these things because I enjoy it.
And so for the little anecdotes, right after we had our pre-brief call, Kevin, you introduced me to a lovely gentleman called Armando Leduc, who does exactly the same thing as we do, offering podcast services to other companies. And actually, we ended up connecting and we had a podcast interview as well. He interviewed me and I was like, he's a competitor, but abundance mindset. Let's do it. I'm going to learn some stuff. Maybe he's going to learn some stuff. The audience is for sure going to learn some stuff. So everybody benefits. And I love this abundance mindset. So that's for the guest. Then you find out that you have people listening to you, coming to you to ask for services as well. And so now the listeners become clients as well. Can you break down a bit for us how you are deliberate about this now? Like, what's typically the funnel? What's the process? Again, not trying to get the secret sauce, but somebody listening to us, how do they make sure that an audience in their niche can end up becoming a client?
For one, you have to have a niche. You have to be focused in an area that, I'll throw this out there, we can get into it later, but we have 3 podcasts, 3 agencies, 3 niches, podcasts successful in every one of them. So I think first having a niche so that you can be direct and market to that audience, and the podcast can be searchable and found if they're looking for that particular thing, like in law. So that helps. So, by having a great guest on there to share, to tag on social media, they're already followed, in this case, by the other lawyers because they look up to them, right? So you're kind of getting onto their audience and there. So that's kind of where we started to get other attorneys listening to our show, not because they care about me or what my opinion is. It's the guests that they follow and look up to.
Yeah.
And then I get assigned a lot of that brand, right? So they go, okay, Kevin must know what he's talking about. And so through recording and through some of the things, slightly talk about digital marketing and SEO, and in the conversation, we don't have ads and we don't go, do you need better SEO or, whatever. We don't do that. It's suggested enough lightly that everyone knows what we do.
Excellent.
Obviously, Array Digital's a sponsor, and it's on our website. And how we've done it has just worked where they know what we do. There's no secret, but it's not pushed or suggested hard, like it's not hard sold, which I think keeps the integrity of the podcast alive, and they're not getting pitched a bunch of services. And so we have the Managing Partners podcast, and also the Managing Partners Mastermind, which is a paid twice a month virtual group of law firm owners that we do talk about and pitch at the end of the podcast, because that's the next step to kind of get them from a listener to involved in a mastermind to, being really a paid client at that point. So that's something that's newer. But I would say, like the other day, I had a lawyer call. Well, I know. So they booked me on a Saturday. And when I met with them that Monday, they said that the guy, he was mowing his lawn in San Francisco.
Classic.
Listening to my podcast inside, and then booked a call off our website. $9,000 a month client fees to us. As far as really getting down in the weeds of like how we do that, I don't know if we do the best job. I think, again, we don't push. I subtly chat about my expertise as a marketer, and that's it. There's no ads. There's no real process for like beating people up with it. So I think that's worked well, especially with lawyers, because they don't trust a lot of people, and they need to feel trusted before they reach out.
It's a long-term play, right? We're going to build a brand over 300 episodes, which I guess has probably taken a couple of years, if not more. And it's just like constantly reminding people subtly that you do stuff in their domain, and actually they can get like all the value for free. And if they want to reach out, then it naturally happens. So I don't necessarily like this B2B term, but it's pretty much what it is. It is demand generation. It's not like sales. It's like you generate demand by just providing so much value over a long period of time that people are just like, yeah, Kevin is the obvious choice. I'm just going to book a call with him. And you end up having proprietary deals. It's like they go to you directly. They don't even look at potential other options. No, you've been the one who's been educating me for the last, 6 months. Of course, I'm going to come with you.
A lot of these lawyers that I talk to, lots of lawyers reach out. I talk to tons that reach out that haven't even started their own firm yet. And so they go, hey,
interesting.
I listened to your podcast. I'm about to start my own firm. And they just want to kind of get some ideas of how we could help them like set up a website and some basic stuff. And so that's really cool, because that's what the podcast is all about.
Yeah.
I had a guest the other day. They're between $50 and $100 million. So I had the owner on. And I'm like, okay, if you were to just, we're talking to brand new startup law firms, like put yourself in that mindset, and what would you tell them right now? So I try to keep, I want to know the cool, big, crazy things, but I also want to be like, hey, the audience is, and I don't even know this for real. I just say it. My audience is lawyers that are struggling, or they're just starting, or they're about to start. What would you say to them? What's some valuable things you could tell them? And my audience is a lot of very successful law firms, I think. But my care is that, are we helping the small startups or the ones that are struggling? That's what I'd rather it be about. And I think, that's where, I get a lot of loyal listeners, and we're hopefully helping people actually grow their law firms. So, and then you have to back this up with content. I post on LinkedIn. I share articles on LinkedIn every week. I put out helpful content. You have to show up everywhere else too. My message is usually the Managing Partners podcast. If you go to my LinkedIn, it says that at the top, because that's my first thing I want them to kind of get engaged with, not hire us for your marketing. Like, I don't want to jump the gun. If they go and go, what's this podcast? And then they start listening, and now they put me up here as an expert. And then when they need my services, or they want to join a mastermind, which is still revenue for us, they're stepping stones, if you will. So, but the podcast is at the heart of all of it. And if I go to a conference in person, which I do often, I know a ton of people. I reach out prior so that we can get together as a group, and then they just refer me other lawyers and introduce me to people. Because we have like a little a group, if you will, at this point.
You're not by yourself. You have this social proof effect that leads you into more people. I mean, nothing is stronger than a referral.
I'm looking, do you have any referrals? Every single one of them leaves me a 5-star review on Google. That's part of our process, right? So we can kind of slice down the process too if you're more interested.
So you have multiple asks then. You have leave me a review, recommend me some guests, potentially work with me. I'm purposefully making it like much more blunt than it probably is. But like, do you get away with all of those? Or do you prioritize one and then you see a bit kind of where it goes and potentially be like, okay, no worries, you don't have any marketing need right now. Totally respect that. Hey, if you had a nice time, would you mind leaving us a review on Google? That helps me, helps other lawyers. How do you play that?
So right now, like we're recording, once we're done, about 10 minutes after we hang up here, and I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe more than not, we get a 5-star review. And they just come off the recording where they feel super great about themselves and like the interview. And they just leave an amazing review. And we don't ask this, they just do it in a way that appears that they work with us for marketing. Again, I don't ask them to do that, but that's what they do. And so I have some of the top lawyers in the country that looks like they work with us, but they don't. And it's great content for us to have and to show as testimonials.
I'm reading some of those right now, and indeed, it's kind of crazy.
It's kind of ridiculous because they talk about me and they talk about Array, but so I get almost all the asks. If I ask for hey, what other managing partners of law firms do you know, friends of yours, that would be awesome on the show? Well, they want their friends, and they want to be able to tell their friends, hey, I got you on this podcast. So that's always an easy ask. And then and I think I skipped this earlier, how do I get a guest to potentially be a client? Well, I would simply say, hey, yeah, thanks so much for recording today. So what I do is just like we're on Riverside. So I'll say, hey, we're gonna say bye, but stay on just so the files can upload and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I'll use that moment of time to say, hey, that was perfect. It was awesome. Like, I'm super stoked about some of the things you said here. We'll use that in some clips. By the way, right before we jumped on, I sent your website and stuff over to my team, and I have Wyatt and some other folks. They're doing kind of a deep dive for you. Something we usually do. I'm going to get that together for you. I'm not asking to have to do anything for you guys, but if I find anything, I'll share it with you. And they're usually like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like, for sure. Because they're entrepreneurs. They're not emotional about anything. Hey, you find something wrong, please tell me so that I can either I can give, my agency a bunch of shit about it, or maybe I would be interested. And usually they have marketers or teams that, again, if they're not doing their jobs, they want to know where they can improve. So I always positive response, or I'll get a direct response. Hey, Kevin, man, I appreciate that. You don't have to do that. We kind of have locked that up. We do that in-house. We're really good at it. If you find anything, great. But I just want to let you know that it's unlikely that we would switch over to you all at this point in time. And then, because that's how lawyers are. They're just kind of direct. So depending on what industry you're in, if anyone's listening, understand your customer. You don't want to waste too much time. If they can't be a client, just say, well, it sounds like you're good. If they find anything, I'll let you know. And then you don't have to have them actually do anything.
Thank you so much for sharing this. And I don't think I've ever talked about it on this podcast publicly, but I will, because you're just, I don't know how to say in English, giving me the stick, but not to get beaten, just because, softball. This is so good. Anybody starting a podcast, that's the perfect call to action, in my opinion, because it's not like, hey, so what do you do for marketing at your law firm? Or like, hey, have you thought about doing more SEO to get more clients? It's more like, hey, my team is going to come up with a personalized analysis, audit of whatever you're doing right now. Send it to you for free, complimentary, to thank you for coming on the show. I do the exact same thing. Complete podcast audit analysis. It's like a 3 pages analysis. I usually record the video personally myself. And the idea is genuinely to start all. So we have 10 sections in it, recommendations in all of them. in a way that if you want, you can implement them yourself. And if you're like, hey, I'd rather have my existing team or you guys potentially do it, then feel free to book a time and we'll have a chat. But I love that you're doing this because it shows it's value until they ask. It's like, come on the show. Let me make you appear as a thought leader. Gonna work on a whole bunch of assets. I'm also gonna give you something for free that is pretty valuable, in our opinion. Do whatever you want with it. And then if they don't pull you in, it's because they don't want to do business with you, which is totally all right. But then if they pull you in, usually had a long enough sequence of value added that they're like likely to move forward.
Yeah, when we give them the content, we're like, hey, here, tag us if you want. Here's all the assets. If they want the full version, we give that to them as well to make their own stuff. And then we tag them for a week or two after, reels, stories, shorts. So we kind of keep that momentum going. If they don't, if they didn't become a client, or maybe they're thinking about it, we're actually engaged with them and sharing their content for, during that whole time period afterwards to kind of keep that alive. So I think that helps a lot. We also send out a newsletter that features them to like 30-some hundred other attorneys. And the thing is, I think about attorneys like to interact with other attorneys. Their biggest referral sources is other attorneys. So I think that's what makes maybe ours maybe different and better.
Network effects.
Because you wouldn't want me to send out an email to 1,000 other podcast agency owners. You wouldn't really care about that too much. But in this case, they learn from each other, and it's a craft, and it's something that that's their livelihood. So I think maybe that, that helps with what we're doing.
This is such a good point. So, because I learned this yesterday from Armando, actually. In the US, you can only get a referrals fee from a case if you're a lawyer yourself. Meaning if you or I, Kevin, go to an attorney and say, hey, I have this cousin who had like walk injury, and you're a walk injury lawyer, take the case, and if you make money, give me back some money. You can't, because you can only receive a fee if you're a lawyer yourself, which is exactly the mechanism that you described here. But back to the beginning of our conversation, where we were saying, if you design your podcast in a way that makes the right people come on your show as guests, and you make sure that the people coming on the show are able to refer you to other people like them, you have that network effect. Maybe not as powerful as, hey, in any case, you want to be acquainted with other lawyers, but it's like you probably know one or two other person who is as awesome as you, who would be a great guest on the show.
Yeah, I mean, think about, doctors or dentists, or they went to school for it. They have licenses for it. They, have credentials, right? They like to hang out with one another. So if any of those niche areas makes sense too, but there's so many opportunities. It's crazy. I was going to mention too, like, again, some of the steps in the processes, if you're interested, but one of the big things that we changed, because I was getting way more guests in the beginning that kind of didn't go to that next sales step, or they didn't, didn't really have the relationship with them enough to feel comfortable asking for, like, hey, when I get that report, I want to meet with you to go over it.
Ah, interesting.
I'll try to actually book a time to do that. Yeah. So if I can do that, that's the goal. But I just felt like, well, I just met them right now. Like, we're recording, and they were just put there by their marketing person, and they just show up, and they don't care about anything but that interview that they're trying to do well at.
Yeah.
And so I added a simple meeting, and I believe you did this with me. Added a simple meeting called a 15-minute call, and they have to book that before they book the podcast interview, and it has to be with that person and me. And so that's where we get to know each other, and we chat about topics, and what are they really passionate about, and what is a project they're working on right now that they'd love to talk about. So adding that that meeting video call has changed everything, because now when they show up to record, it's like, oh, hey, what's up? We are old friends. And they also have taken time to maybe listen to more podcast episodes featuring me and a guest. And now they're like, okay, like, Kevin, you're all over the place, and you've interviewed with all these people that I know. And then now they're not nervous. They've already talked to me before. Again, so much more comfortable. And asking for those things has been 10 times more effective.
I love getting tactical. And obviously I love this stuff. I guess it shows. So this little pre-brief call is so important, and we could recommend it to anybody starting a podcast for exactly the reasons that you mentioned. You build rapport, you align on the topic. Maybe there are some things that you guest absolutely wants to talk about that you probably wouldn't know, or it wouldn't come across as good if you were just finding out during the episode. Maybe there are some stuff they don't want to talk about. It's a podcast, so anything can be edited out, but being able to nail down this thing in a pre-brief call where you build rapport without pressure, because it's not recorded, even if it's not live, people are sometimes a bit like, even podcasters. I interview only podcasters who do that for a living, but still, it's live. I mean, it's recorded. And then I'm curious to know what the process is for you. We booked the interview right away because we had some clients who were doing all those pre-brief calls. And then, okay, cool, I'll send you the link to schedule the recording. And like the drop rate was quite high, like 50-60% of the guests wouldn't book a call because they just forget, don't find the time, or there is no time that fits their schedule. Whereas if you can do this at the last 2-3 minutes, and I believe that's what we did as well, Kevin, you know that you have the interview secured, you have the whole process oiled, and you can rock and roll. But I love that we're getting tactical like this.
Here's a tip. So what I do is if I get someone that say, hey, we're interested. Lawyers have a lot of assistants or marketers and stuff like that. So like, cool, let me kick you over to so-and-so. They'll book everything. So that lawyers just, if they have any success, that's most of the time what they're going to do. But I do have ones that self-book too. So what I do is I have a template email.
Okay.
And so I just get that they want to be on. I think they should be on. I go, boom, email. And so I just click the template and send it. And so it does both. So it says, very excited to have you on the Managing Partners podcast. I always hold a 15-minute call to get to know you and discuss the topic for the recording. Also, so we can prep and make sure everything looks and sounds good. That link is below, as well as the podcast booking link. And so they're right on top of each other pretty much. And that's pretty successful that when they book both at the same time.
Interesting.
And so that way that's out of their way. I see the 15-minute call come through. It goes in my Slack, HubSpot, bing, ding, ding. And then usually a few minutes later, you'll see the podcast booking. And so that's worked, I would say, 80% of the time. Sometimes when I get on the 15-minute call, when I wrap it up, I say, hey, did you book the podcast yet? I didn't check to see. So I just I play dumb. And they go, yeah, I think we did. And then I'll go look and go, oh, yep, it looks like you're good for next week. But sometimes they haven't. They go, oh, no, we didn't book it yet. We just thought we were doing this call. So in the chat, I'll say, here's the link. I'm going to email it to you as well. Can you let me know that you have the link? And then I would say, 75% of the time, they'll book within a few minutes after that call. The ones that drop off or don't book, I'm not a crazy follow-up person. So, it's on them. Because I have so many guests booked out months in advance. I think early on, every guest maybe counts, but just move on. I would say don't try to beat someone up, and if they're not interested.
Fair enough.
Because you're putting a lot of effort into it.
That's true. Yeah, and once they come on the show, you want them to be 100%, and if they wouldn't book by themselves, maybe it means that they wouldn't be 100%. Yeah, that makes sense.
It means they might not refer you. It means they might not actively engage on social media or post it to their following.
True that. They
might not be very organized. That's a lot of the value that you get back. So, yeah, I would say do a follow-up and check in, but other than that, I wouldn't chase them.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, that does make sense. Everything that's going to come afterwards that you want to be happening might not be for this type of guest.
Put them in your email distribution list so that they can see and get hit with all the podcast stuff and then go, oh, crap, I never booked.
Kevin, there is probably some things that you've learned after publishing. I think you mentioned 1,300 podcast episodes between you three podcasts, 3 agencies.
Oh, it's probably more like 2,000 if you combine them all.
I got my numbers wrong here. So if you had one advice for people in the B2B space who want to get started with a podcast or who got started but maybe are not nailing it down properly, what's your number one recommendation when it comes to B2B podcast for lead gen and brand building?
Make sure you have a niche. Make sure you have a clear message. I would say you need to do you can do all kinds of podcasts. You can do a solo, you can do a group, you can do whatever.
Yeah.
For B2B, interview style, just like this that you're watching. You can have multiple guests as, on the show at the same time that maybe from that company, but you want to do interview style. What's the audience and what do you want them to get out of it? Just a little bit. Again, like me, it's all about growing a law firm and business, not about the law. You could easily just do it about the law and that would be fine. You'd have lawyers tune in for that, or whatever industry you're in. You could do that easily and that'd be fine. But you can easily just let them talk about what they love and you would have a show. Boom, done. Outside of that, don't go too far down the rabbit hole. I think, the bigged advice I have is just start. I know so many people, they're like, yeah, look at all the equipment I got. I got the mic. I got all this stuff. Had this for 2 years. I made a little space. Never recorded an episode. So number one, just start recording.
Thinking of somebody right now.
You bring on a partner, you have to hire someone to handhold and make you do it. Then do that, because once you have some money invested, you're going to do it, right? So just like anything. Free masterminds, you can come and go when you want. Guess what? Not a lot of people show up and it's hit or miss. Free events. You sold 2,000 free tickets, 800 show up. I mean, if you sold 2,000 tickets for $100, you'd probably have closer to 2,000 show up. So I think, you have to just start. You're not going to like the sound of your voice. It's not going to be the best podcast. And it's never going to be until you start and repetition. You just got to keep doing it. So I think pick that number one goal. And that goal should be the prospect one-on-one and build that relationship. If you focus on that, everything else will kind of fall in place.
Thank you so much for coming on Podcast Gurus. If people want to find out more about you, where should they go?
I love talking about this. I feel like there's so many more things we could cover. So before I talk about that, how to connect with me, I'll just leave you all with this. I have 3 agencies, 53 employees on a run rate to $8 million in revenue, and 3 podcasts. The podcasts are the linchpin. Like they're the main source of, I guess, success in getting into these niche markets. If I start a 4th agency, podcast is day one. No question. So it's still a blue ocean out there with podcasts. There's more than 2 billion websites active with blogs and stuff. There's only millions of podcasts. So if you take the difference in that number right there, there's so much opportunity. I'll leave you with that. It works. And this guy can help you out for sure if you need help. So to find me, it's just Kevin Daisey, Daisey. That's a unique name. So if you Google that, you'll find me everywhere. You'll see the podcast, I'm sure. LinkedIn, most active on that, where lawyers hang out, and you can find me there. Connect, ask me any questions. I'm happy to answer anything.
Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show and for giving us so much knowledge. That was great. Thank you so much.